Where in the world is Caleb Franzen?
Where in the world?
All right, Straza, let's get off the charts with Caleb Franzen. And I want to start right off the top. Where in the world is Caleb Franzen today?
Guys, I am tuning in, or calling in, I should say, from Budva, Montenegro. I got here 1 week ago, sandwiched between Albania and Croatia. Beautiful coastline. It's a good place to be. It's a good place to be.
I got to pull up Google Maps to figure out where the hell you are, because I have no idea where any of those places are.
We joke because you're always all over the world, but this is a really good place to start. Why don't you talk about why you're able to do that? I think a few years ago, you launched your own thing, started writing research, and now you find yourself in a new city around the world like every week.
Yeah, exactly. I went through a big turning point in my career during COVID, really did kind of a self reevaluation about what I wanted out of life, my career, the whole 9 yards. And so I quit my corporate banking job in September of 2020, wanting to start trading full time, obviously, and then to kind of create a bit of a sell side investment research practice, if you will. And even at the time, I thought like, hey, maybe I'll just start posting on Twitter, start networking, getting connected. Even like JC, I've been looking up to JC for probably the past 10 years. And so now like to be on his radar, on your guys' radar, being a guest on, like, this whole thing is just surreal to me, right? And so kind of the grander vision that I had when I quit that job and went off on this endeavor was I wanted to be able to work from anywhere. I wanted to be able to travel. I wanted to be able to kind of have my own schedule, the whole 9 yards. And so in March of last year, I was able to come out full time to Europe. And I was only planning to be here for like 3 months at most. I came out with a travel backpack, 30 liters, and a carry-on suitcase. And here I am now, 14, 15 months later, and no signs of slowing down.
So like, how have you been able to do that with like visas? You're still there?
It's a little bit of a challenge, but one that you can easily get through. Luckily, as an American, we probably have the best passport, or one of the best passports in the world. So I'm able to stay in Europe's kind of Schengen. There's a list of countries that are in the Schengen region, and I'm allowed to stay there for 90 days out of every 180 days. So it's basically 3 months on, 3 months off, 3 months on, 3 months off. And so right now I'm in one of those 3 months off period, which is why I'm here in Montenegro.
So you're living this lifestyle that a lot of people like fantasize about, right? Like you're just kind of, you got nothing holding you down. You're a single guy. You're traveling around the world. I assume you're doing tremendous financial arbitrage, like living way cheaper out there than you would in the US. One question that I have is, okay, you're from the US. That's your home. What did you do with all your shit? Like, do you own your house in the States and you're just leaving that empty for now, or you got stuff in a pod somewhere? Like, how does that even work?
Dude, I have some stuff in storage. I have some stuff at my mom's house. I have some stuff at my nana's house, and I had to give a bunch away to Goodwill. So literally, things are everywhere and all over the place. And now that it's been more than a year since I kind of like put things in places, I don't know like what's where, you know what I mean? It's like, it's going to be a mystery when I return back to the States to recollect everything and figure out what's in this box, what's in that box. So it's going to be an interesting challenge.
And the big reason you're able to do what you do is because you work in the industry that we work in. You're working for yourself, you're trading. We'll get into what you trade in a little bit, I'm sure. But I know you do a lot in the Bitcoin space and the crypto space. So we all know cryptocurrencies are 24/7, right? There's no, you're not constrained to the US hours. So as someone who's based in the US, and Straz is based in the US, and we interact with you in the US during our regular business hours, what does a typical work day look for you? Are you working US hours while you're in Europe, or are you doing some kind of hybrid thing?
Yeah, pretty much. And I guess it's a little bit hybrid. So the interesting thing, so I'm in Montenegro right now. And so for me, traditional finance markets open up at 3:30 in the afternoon. The market closes 10 p.m. So for me, actually, this work schedule to be aligned with US markets has been beautiful, right? Because it allows me to be a tourist in the mornings, in the early afternoons, go on some little adventures, wake up late, have a coffee, enjoy my cigarette, and then I get to come back and trade the markets watch the news come out, the whole 9 yards. So that's been really nice. With crypto, I mean, I think it's the same challenge that everyone deals with everywhere. It's a 24/7 market, right? So like I have my alerts set. Sometimes I'm waking up in the middle of the night and it's 2:00. I'm like, oh, let me just check really quick where crypto's trading. I'll open up my laptop one more time and then I'll fall back asleep. But yeah, I mean, I wasn't sure how the trading dynamic and the time difference was really going to be. But I think now that I've been doing it now for the past year, I recognized right off the bat that I thought that it was going to be a really seamless transition and an easy process. And I think for me, it's been kind of the best of both worlds. Because obviously for me, like you kind of touched on, there is kind of this like dollar arbitrage opportunity when you're earning dollars, you're trading in dollars, and then you get to spend in foreign currency, right? But at the same time, it's really kind of allowed me the opportunity. Like I want to travel. I want to be able to experience new cultures. I want to go do kind of those traditional touristy type things, right? I'm only 29 years old. So for me, traveling is a top priority, and getting to be able to see the world. So, you know, it's been the perfect balance. It's been really great.
So traveling was always a priority. That's one of the reasons it kind of appealed to you to go off and do your own thing. What else kind of aided in that decision to leave corporate America and start Cubic?
So like, you know, I was working in banking as a portfolio analyst, but it wasn't like a trading portfolio analyst. It was a loan portfolio analyst. And I think the grander vision that I had was kind of like what you're sold in college. I went to UCSB and got my econ degree there, which is get a job in banking, ideally investment banking, and try to work your way into sell side so that eventually you can get the buy side. And I think I started to realize I was in that banking position for almost 2 years and I was applying for other opportunities and just kind of realizing I was going to be going from one pot of boiling water to the next. I wasn't really going to be materially improving what I wanted out of life. Even my earnings opportunities weren't nearly as, like the gains weren't as incremental as I was, or they were less incremental as I was expecting. So I don't know, I just had to do kind of a whole reevaluation. And I think for me, one of the things at the time I was also considering grad school. And I was like, man, okay, I start studying for the tests. I'm just like, I do not want to do any of this whatsoever. I don't want to restudy for these exams just so I can go get my master's in finance or an MBA. And 2 years later, right, I graduate, I have much more debt. And now I'm going back into another miserable corporate finance job. Like, why would I want to do that to myself? This was all during COVID. And then July 2020, my roommate and I, we went to Colorado. We had to get out of San Francisco. We just couldn't take it anymore. And so we went to Colorado and I had a little bit of an interesting experience out there. And
Colorado changes a man.
Yeah.
That's where I live.
Oh, no way. Okay, awesome.
Yeah,
I didn't know
Boulder.
that. Okay, fantastic. And like, I didn't have like a moment where something clicked, but I think a couple of months down the line, the experience that I did have in Colorado just kind of gave me the confidence to make the transition. And at the same time, I was looking at it like, okay, this could open new opportunities for me where I can bypass kind of this multi-step process to get to working in investing or securities research or anything else.
Well, what do you mean you had an experience with, like, were you doing mushrooms in the woods or something?
That's exactly it, actually. Yes.
Yes.
Really? And you had epiphany, like, forget it. I'm going to go do this, take some risks.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know how deep into the water we want to get on this.
We want to go deep. Let's go.
I'm an open book. So, you know, I've experimented with psychedelic mushrooms a few times. I've never used it as like a party drug or anything like this. I've used it really as like a meditational kind of tool.
Speaking my language, brother.
Yeah. And, you know, like I said, I was going through this whole kind of reassessment about what I wanted out of life during that period with COVID. I think a lot of people were going through that at the time. And like I said, I didn't have any kind of like epiphany moment on that experience that I had in Colorado. But I think it just, I knew for a fact after that experience that what I was doing, I was not meant to be doing. And I think that more than anything else facilitated the change.
So you knew you had to try something new, but you knew it wasn't going to be easy. Talk about, like, just, were you already kind of out there on social media or Twitter back then? No.
None. Not at all. Yeah.
Completely kind of break in from zero. How many followers do you have today?
I think 48,000, right around there.
You had zero not long ago.
Yeah, 3 years ago I had zero.
How, like, talk about that. That had to be I remember the early when I started.
Yeah,
And we want you to talk about it because it's important, right? Because Straz and I talk about this all the time. As traders, who many of us work from home, you work from random hotel rooms around the world. we need to have a network, right? We need to find our audience and our people, right? So
yeah,
with that in mind, talk to us about how you kind of broke into the whole social media scene.
I mean, I'm still trying to figure it out, to be quite honest. I think all of us are just trying to figure it out. And it's not like I have some secret sauce. I feel like in a lot of ways, my growth has been slow, and some periods it's been really exponential, So I think one thing that I recognized for sure is I needed to get my voice out there. And kind of looking around at the landscape, I think a lot of people look, whatever their niche is, if it's cooking, if it's being a musician, if it's talking about finance and trading or investing or macro, it's like, oh, the market's saturated. There's already a bunch of people talking about that. And there's no other Caleb Franzen out there. There's no other Steve Straza out there. There's no other, you can go on and on and on. So the market is not saturated. And so I felt like I had to kind of get my ideas, my thoughts, my analysis out into the market. I wanted to earn the respect of guys like yourself who had already built substantial followings and reputations, and just network, get involved, throw my hat into the ring, right? And so I think it's exceeded every expectation that I've had in terms of the rewards from it, the networking opportunities from it, so on and so forth. And it's been, I'm so grateful for it, like just tremendously. And it's been a lot of work, 100%. And like, I have no background in marketing. That's not my niche, right? All I focus on is just as much as possible, creating value and doing it consistently and operating with a high amount of integrity. And in my opinion, the rest will take care of itself.
Straza, Caleb is a perfect example of our friend, our mutual friend, Phil Pearlman used to say this all the time. Back when we were starting StockTwits, he would tell people that, listen, if you want to build an audience, just share amazing stuff. Just be giving of the community, give everything you got. Yep. Just keep sharing great content. Your audience will come. Don't force it. Just be consistent. Just put out great stuff. And you're a perfect example of that. You are constantly sharing great information out there, sharing charts, sharing things you're looking at, sharing trade ideas, engaging on Twitter Spaces. You hang out on our spaces all the time, and we really do appreciate it. And you bring value to our talks. So you're a perfect embodiment of that. So for anyone out there who's trying to build an audience on social media, follow Caleb. Look what he's doing. He's a model of how you get this done quickly.
Yeah. And also, to put yourself out there and share great stuff, really something I should do more of. We should all do more of. Caleb, I think you do a great job at. It's just you're sharing thoughts throughout the day also, right? So I'm talking about tweets without charts, where you're just, thinking about the CPI, and this is the way I think of markets. I think that's great too, but it takes a certain level of confidence to do that, right? And start putting those tweets out there. You, as young as you were, like 4 years ago when you started, and what do you think gave you that confidence? Was it your education? And you're obviously an intelligent guy about a lot of these, macroeconomic things also. Are you self-taught? Did you get that from school, work? Like your background really allowed you to break in the way you have.
Thanks, man. In terms of the confidence to do it, I think before I used to be very shy about putting ideas out there, whatever it was, right? And even I'm not big, I don't do much on social media, ironically as it is, right? Like I haven't posted on Instagram since 2018, right? Like I'm not aligned with that inherently, right? So I had to get out of my comfort zone, even just to start posting on X, on Twitter, right? And I think for me, it was I burned the bridge that I had in my corporate banking job. It's like I had no other choice. There was no plan B, essentially. It was like I have to engage. I have to build a brand and a reputation and get my ideas out there. And as much as possible, like we were saying, create value for other people without asking for anything in return, right? So I don't know. It was like when I made the decision to leave my corporate job and start something and start trading full time on my own, it was like, okay, I should probably start sharing ideas online and kind of tap into the network that's out there. And it was at that point, it was just like a light bulb switch. And I've never struggled with an insecurity of posting, or should I not share this? Yeah. And so your other question was also about kind of from a background experience.
Yeah. Where'd you learn?
So yeah, I mean,
school?
I learned a decent amount from school, right? But I mean, it's textbook stuff, like by definition. I had an amazing professor, two amazing professors in economics that really just made me fall in love with that topic. And then kind of personally, I just became obsessed with the Federal Reserve, the monetary system. I really viewed it as kind of the lifeblood of the economy with a currency. And okay, well, who's controlling the currency and how are we valuing this? And what are interest rates and why are they so important and so on and so forth. And so for me, like my own real kind of personal interest, I would say skewed in two ways, really deep into monetary policy and the Fed. And then also with investing, going into trading, and then really going into technical analysis, which has been a huge passion of mine now for at least the last 9 years.
One of the, I think, biggest obstacles for people with a background like yours is coming in and having very little experience with markets right after college, or even after one job like that. So you start trading 4 years back. The difference between theory and practice, right? The stuff you learn in the books versus what actually happens in the market on a day-to-day basis. How's that gone?
Yeah, I mean, it's night and day difference, right? And, you know, like, thankfully for me, like I was trading even during college. And I remember like I'd be in these study groups with friends of mine, and they're like going over these like certain equations for our upcoming macro test or corporate finance class. And I'm like, I'm doing TA on like Google, you know what I mean? It's like, I'm out here like, you know, I got Thinkorswim open. I'm like drawing lines, drawing fibs, looking at different indicators, the whole 9 yards. And like, I always had to get pulled back into academics, right? And I think that like, even kind of going back to what we were talking about with kind of like my whole transition process, thinking about going back to grad school, it just like brought up like all these bad memories. It's like, in one side, I loved school. I loved being able to study, quote unquote, my passion. But at the same time, I just saw it as like, this isn't really going to be like my banking job. First of all, they never even asked me for like a diploma or verification of, you know, my degree. And then like never once did I actually use anything that I learned in college in my corporate banking job. Not once, right? Maybe some Excel skills that I kind of picked up in a few classes. But from like a theoretical standpoint or from, you know, like an academic, like nothing translated, right? So I'm self-taught in so many different ways, using as much as possible, leveraging online resources, YouTube. I wish I got on X way sooner, right? Like this is something that I should have really been involved with way, way sooner. And, you know, that's probably one of my biggest regrets, to be honest.
Were you,
have any at all.
Listening and paying attention on X, just not participating, or you weren't even? Really?
No. Yeah. I mean, so I'm a huge fan of like the guys at Ritholtz Wealth Management and the Compound Show. And so like they would be referencing tweets all the time, pulling them up on their chart, like chart on the whole 9 yards, right? And I was always like seeing that value is being added on that platform, but it never once occurred to me like, hey, I should get on there and start finding stuff for myself or contribute to the conversation. It was just, it never even crossed my mind. I don't know. It's crazy in hindsight.
What was it that made you get involved finally?
I think it was just the decision. Like as much as possible, first of all, I'm doing my trading, I'm doing my research, and I want to share that with the world. So I felt like that was important for me. And then also I saw it as, you know, I'm quitting my job and I'm going to trade full time. There's a chance I go bust. Knock on wood, that hasn't happened yet, right? But on one side, it was like, okay, there's going to be value in me creating really good relationships that could maybe turn into job opportunities in the event that things do go awry. And maybe I'll need to point to some level of expertise in this field where I don't have a traditional professional background in, but I need to show something for my work. How else am I going to do that if I'm not sharing ideas online?
We hire people we find on Twitter all the time.
It's great. Yeah.
Oh yeah. I mean, I think everybody at All Star Charts, none of us would know each other if it wasn't for Twitter.
Most of us met on Twitter. Yeah.
Yeah. Look, the best people who I've met over the course of the past year, because I've met people in person, like I'm solo traveling, right? But the closest friend who I met was a guy in Bucharest, Romania, who messaged me when I announced that I was going there. And this guy was awesome. Shout out to my homie Harry. And he got me connected with a bunch of people out there in Bucharest, a bunch of heavy hitters. I just got immediately elevated into like an echelon of people, all from a relationship, not even a relationship, all just from a connection on Twitter that materialized into something like amazing. Like I can genuinely call this guy one of my close friends.
And that's the value proposition of Twitter, right?
Yeah.
You're out there and sometimes it feels like, man, I'm just giving all this stuff away for free. Not at all. Like what you're talking about right there, that's what you get back. That's the value that you get back.
People are paying attention for sure. And that reminds me of a question I thought of a little bit back, but it's relevant now. In all these cities that you're traveling to, you've been doing this now. How long have you been traveling now? 2 years?
14 months.
14 months. Okay. So during this time, you've moved around 4 or 5 different places. You mentioned earlier that you kind of being a tourist during the mornings, during the days. Are you meeting people? Are you making friends out there? Or are you just kind of being a tourist and then working and minding your own business?
I'm meeting a few people. I'm dating, so that helps. That's always fun. I'm not a recluse by any means, but I'm an only child, grew up with a single mother. So I'm very used to kind of being on my own and independent, and I'm very comfortable in that environment. Okay. So, like 95% of my dinners, I'm by myself. And like, I genuinely do enjoy those experiences.
Now,
so
I'm guessing you're not going to the local coffee shop and trying to pick up girls with one-lines. You're probably using dating apps and things like that, right?
A little bit of both.
I've been married for 25 years. I'm so out of the game. I have no idea how people even meet these days.
Yeah, it's a challenge for everybody. Trust me.
All right. So how long do you think you're going to stay out there on the road? Do you have a plan? Do you have to come back to the US at some point, or are you just winging it?
So I don't have to come back to the US at some point. I mean, I want to, I will 100%. I miss my family. I miss my longtime friends in Santa Barbara. But I'm not giving myself kind of a time limit on this. I'm just going to kind of keep going until I feel like I'm ready to come back. And, there's still a lot of places I want to check out. I want to go to Prague. I want to go back to Budapest. I want to go back to Croatia. I have a lot of family in Italy, so I want to go visit them again very soon. I want to go to Portugal. There's a lot of places that are still high on the list. So, I'm not giving myself a deadline on this, and I'm just going to kind of keep going until it starts to get tiresome or, I miss home.
So one thing that we talk about a lot with people in these conversations is the pressure that comes along with trying to make a living from the markets. With you being on the other side of the world, away from family, away from close friends, do you feel a more intense pressure to continually make money, or do you feel less pressure because things are cheaper out there? I'm just curious if that plays into your mindset at all.
It actually doesn't. I think that pressure is always there, right? You're not going to be able to shed that. Maybe if I'm like trading massive size and I'm like, okay, maybe the pressure dynamics change, right? I'm not quite there yet. I'm doing well enough to make a living, right? And increase my net worth, which has been fantastic. Like, I'm so grateful for that. But in terms of like the pressure associated with being here alone in Europe and trying to, live out of Airbnbs, it's funny. I did a post. We were talking about, I don't post on Instagram, but I still post on my stories. Like, my cost of living out here, and I'm not living like a luxury lifestyle, but I'm not living tight. My budget every month is $2,000.
And that's
for Airbnb. Everything. Yeah, that's for Airbnb. That's for food. That's for travel. Everything. Wow. It's $2,000. And before I left to come out here, I was looking at going to Miami. I was looking at moving to Phoenix. I was thinking about San Diego.
We'll spend $2,000 on brunch in Miami, dude.
Exactly.
Better off.
And yeah. So, not only has this been like a super fulfilling experience in terms of life and travel and being to experience these new cultures, and it's a hell of a story. But it's also been like financially a much smarter move for me personally, right? Yeah, it's and I like, people hear like, you're living out of Airbnbs, that must be so expensive. I've lived in like really great high-end Airbnbs with amazing views. When I was in Albania, I spent $900 for 1 month on this amazing Airbnb. The most expensive one that I had was in Budapest. I spent $1,600 that month on the Airbnb. And like, that's cheap for American standards in a lot of ways, right? Like, maybe if you're living in like Gainesville, Florida, it's going to be much more expensive. But if you're talking about San Diego, LA, San Francisco, New York, even Austin, Nashville, it's comparable prices. In fact, it's much cheaper. to be out here.
$1,600 you spent for rent for the entire month in Budapest. I mean, that's less than I spend in groceries every month.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Yeah.
So
Hey,
go ahead, Straza.
Do you consider yourself a trader? Like what is your day-to-day like? More of an investor? Speculator? What would you call it?
Speculator. Yeah. Look, I'm trying to wear multiple hats, right? Because I'm 29, so I know for the long run. I worked a little bit in wealth management as well, so I know I need to invest for the long run. So I have like all of these different portfolios. I have like a short-term crypto trading account, I have a short-term equity trading account, and I really have my long-term stuff, and then I have a SEP IRA, right? So I'm kind of balancing all these different things. I think when I kind of think about, like, it's an interesting question, like what am I? Who am I, right? And I really view it as being a trader and an analyst. And inherently in being a trader, you have to be an analyst. And, like I'm sharing a shit ton of analysis, right? So I clearly have enough time during my trading process to share analysis for free that I'm not expecting anything in return from, right? And I think in part, right, with trading some of this crypto stuff, I would say, like, in general, my holding period on these trades is anywhere from like 5 days to 2 or 3 weeks. So they're relatively short term, but I'm comfortable to sit in them. I don't feel like I have to super actively manage them. Like I'm rarely looking at like 5-minute candles or anything like that, right? Where it's like I'm able to balance it both really well, I think.
I feel like it has to be at least the time frame you stated or longer. I think anything shorter than that would make it really difficult to put out at least as much and the level of quality research that you're doing, no?
Yeah, I mean, if I was trading much shorter time frames, then the volume of my posts would go down significantly, right? 100%. And like, so even like the newsletter that I write, the free newsletter, I write that every Saturday and I publish it every Saturday as well. And when I open up my computer laptop and go to write that newsletter, I have no preconceived notion about what I'm going to talk about, what I'm going to analyze. And the whole process takes me, 4 to 6 hours to get from start to publish. And, during that period, I'm even taking trades, I'm exiting positions, I'm managing risk on those investments, right? So it's again, like kind of what we were talking about with crypto being open 24/7. It's kind of like a blessing and a curse, right? Because I have the ability at any given time to drop what I'm doing and be focused on that market. And it also gives me the flexibility to do other things and play stops and feel comfortable that, okay, I'm going to be fine.
So do you view the two activities, trading and research, as competing with one another for your time and energy, or as complementary?
Inherently, yes, they are competing, right? Because we only have so much time in the day. At the same time, I can tell you for a fact, I know more about what's happening in the market right now and over the past few years than at any time before this, because I'm so dialed in at all times. I'm so dedicated to these markets and finding quality setups, quality analysis, interesting relationships, interesting correlations, new economic data. I can recite like the last 6 months of any data point, right? Just off the top. And this kind of like, I didn't used to be able to do that in 2019. I thought I knew the data really well. So in some parts, of course, they're competing. I have, like everyone else, I have time constraints. But at the same time, I think it's made me much more confident as an investor to know what's happening in these markets and feel confident that I'm not going to be blindsided by some economic data point that I wasn't ready for.
I think they really feed each other. And I think, Sean, you would probably agree with me.
Oh,
right?
absolutely.
So, like I would not be a good trader if I wasn't doing the research that we're doing. And I wouldn't be doing good research if I wasn't trading, right? The research wouldn't be as good. So like they need each other and they also give each other ideas. And I think you just kind of find like a nice balance between the two. And there's always going to be times, right, where you're like, it's too late. I can't write that post today. And then another day goes by and 2 days go by and you're like, I missed it. Forget about it.
But it's, goes to the point that like we say all the time, and JC loves to say it all the time too. He says, when in doubt, zoom out. And the research that you do, right? You're looking at trends developing over various time frames. And so you're developing a big picture in your head. And that big picture may not, be the time frame of that YOLO call you're about to go by. That you're in it for a week. But knowing that you've got a structural trend just as a wind in your sails to put that trade on, that gives you extra edge, extra confidence, and it's so important. So don't downplay it. I mean, that's a big deal.
Yeah. Agreed.
All right. So Caleb, you've been traveling the world. This doesn't have to be trading related. It can be if you'd like it to be, but what has there been any moment or experience or epiphany or person that you've met in your travels that have like affected your worldview, like affected the way you think about things, about life, about business, about relationships, anything?
Interesting. I think one thing for sure is I feel kind of like a heightened degree of confidence in my ability to kind of get through uncomfortable situations, right? Like, for example, to get here to Montenegro, I had to fly to Albania from Bucharest. And I said, you know what? I'm going to arrive in the capital, Tirana, Albania. I'm not going to figure out how I'm going to get to the center of the city, and I'm not going to book a hotel or any accommodations for the night. And I'm just going to arrive and I'm going to figure it out. And, you know, I navigated that just fine, right? Got right to the center of the city by bus, walked around the main square, Skanderberg Square, found a hotel, walked in. I was like, hey, you know, I don't have a reservation, but do you guys have any rooms available? And, you know, it was just like, everything worked out so seamlessly, right? It was like this beautiful experience of saying like, oh, you really can just kind of like, have belief in yourself, in your abilities, in your knowledge, in your skill set, and just go figure it out. Everything's going to be okay, right? One thing that was crazy was probably like one of the most interesting experiences I've had was in Istanbul. I think that was probably the most kind of like culture shock that I had was arriving in Istanbul. And I got out of that airport on the Asian side of Istanbul, and I felt like I was really just dropped somewhere completely different, right? And it was like absolute mayhem. And again, I didn't know how I was going to get to the center of Istanbul from this airport and to get to my Airbnb. And I walk out and I'm trying to order an Uber because these taxi guys are trying to rip me off. I'm like, you're trying to make me pay like your monthly salary here. Like it's cheap, but I'm not going to pay that. Like, let's at least negotiate. They weren't having it. So I was trying to call an Airbnb, an Uber. They wanted me to go back into the airport, go back up onto the top. This armed security guard isn't letting me back into the airport. It was just like absolute chaos. I'm like, holy shit, how am I going to get through this? There's like all this crazy situation happening outside this airport. And again, I just was able to figure it out, found the bus, got me to a nearby area, and like everything worked itself. It was like miraculous. I can't even explain like how everything just kind of fell into place. And so I think for me, one of the things that has taken place is just feeling like a heightened degree of confidence that everything is going to be fine. And I'm in these places where I don't speak the language. I don't know anybody here. I might not even have the currency of that country on hand. And I haven't had like a single bad or unsafe experience in 14 months. And, you know, like I've spent 5 months in Bucharest, Romania. Most people would not even imagine that that's a place worth going to, and probably think they have a lot of preconceived notions about what it's like there. And I promise you, it's not like that at all. And in fact, it's been my favorite place that I've been in Bucharest, Romania.
Have you always been? Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Where was I going to go with this? Just that, you know, like I haven't had any unsafe experience. Everywhere I've gone, I felt extremely comfortable. And I think in and of itself, like that has just kind of allowed me to kind of open up the different possibilities that are out there and just kind of buckle up for the ride and say like, hey, this is one hell of an experience. I'm going to try to make the most of it as best as I can.
Go ahead, Sean.
We keep cutting stress off. Well, you know, Caleb, what you're experiencing here, this act of stepping out into the unknown, kind of taking a leap of faith, but knowing that you can kind of trust in yourself to figure it out. That is a skill that directly applies to trading, to what we do, right? Like when you put a trade on, when I put a trade on, when Steve puts a trade on, we don't know what's going to happen next. All we can do is control what we can control, and, you know, be confident enough to know that we've put a plan together and we know what we're going to do when we can do it. But again, we're going to control what we can control, and that's it. And whatever else happens, we're comfortable. We'll live with it. And you're doing that in your life, not just in trading. I mean, you're learning trading skills without even trading in a strange way. I don't know if I'm explaining that correctly.
No, you did 100%. I fully agree with you. It's a great point. And, because again, like if you're worried about the uncontrollables, you're basically setting yourself up for failure, right? There's no point in feeling stress in certain moments might be helpful, right? Like if your back is against the wall, you have to make fast actions. You have to be quick on your toes. But at the same time, like stress has never necessarily helped me make better decisions, right? So why feel stressed about something that you can't control in the first place? All you can try to do is create a plan on how to deal with uncontrollables if and when they do arise, right? And so I think you hit the nail on the head there, right? Like I think, as you kind of mentioned that actually, and I think about it from like an introspective standpoint, the amount that I've increased my focus on managing risk has been like exponential over the past couple of years, right? Even before I came out here. But I think more so than ever, I felt more comfortable to take risk, be able to focus on controlling that risk. And if I get stopped out, I get stopped out, right? Like that's the market. You're going to get stopped out. And it's funny, like people try to point fingers at me on X sometimes, or, talk about miners or MicroStrategy, so on and so forth. It's like, dude, people expect me to be like Steph Curry from three and just like don't miss. But it's like even Steph Curry misses a bunch of threes, right? Like if he's shooting 45% from three, that's like an MVP caliber season from him, right? And it's like the very nature is some of the best traders of all time have a hit rate of 55 to 60% at best. Like that's stellar, right? And I think a lot of people who get into trading are kind of sold this narrative that like, oh, this guy's got a 90% hit rate. It's like, man, yeah, good luck, right? You better hope he's got a 90% hit rate, right? What else is he trying to sell you? Yeah, I think it's a great point. It's a great point.
Do you think you've always been this way, like this laid back, kind of easygoing, or did your experiences kind of help you to kind of find this attitude?
I've been pretty laid back my entire life. I grew up in Southern California. Grew up with a single mother who was getting her bachelor's and then her master's and her PhD in biochemistry at UCSB. So I kind of grew up in not only like an academic background, but really kind of socializing with a lot of adults. I was like tied to my mother's hip, right, as you would imagine. And I grew up competing in sports. I've always kind of had this competitive edge and
What'd you play?
I grew up first of all competing in basketball, and I was on some AAU teams, and then at 12 years old, I transitioned full-time into tennis. Tennis is really big in my family, so I think kind of that individual sport kind of cultivated a lot out of me as well.
You still play?
No, but man, I crave it a lot. So I got to get my hands on a racket out here somewhere and play on some clay courts. That's like a dream of mine.
I've played very little tennis. The big thing everywhere, but especially new here, is pickleball's finally come into my town, and my wife is playing it. I'm telling you, now that my wife's involved, that's it. That's the top. There's no more pickleball.
That's the top. Oh my gosh. Pickleball is fun, man. It's a good time. It's casual, it's like playing ping pong. It's just kind of a way to pass the time. And, it's a skill. It's not a sport as far as I'm concerned, but it's a good time. It's fun.
Well, speaking of sports, you're in Eastern Europe. They do sports a little differently out there. They have football, which we call soccer. I imagine there's a bunch of other weird, what we Americans might think is weird. Have you come across any passionate fans that are into some sport that you're totally clueless about?
I met a couple of guys in Romania who play for the national water polo team. So that was interesting.
That's cool. That's hard too.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's a grueling sport. In high school, I was friends with some water polo players, and they were killer. And then a couple of the girls at our high school team actually were on the Olympic team that won a couple of years back. So that was pretty exciting. Let's see, what else? I don't know. I mean, one guy who I've gotten networked with, he's a professional polo player as well, which is badass. Shout out to Santa Barbara Polo and Racket Club if they're watching this. That's like one of my favorite places to spend time. So
when Straz and I were in Hong Kong last summer, our hotel room, or at least my hotel room, overlooked the Hong Kong Polo and Cricket Club.
Oh, nice. Dude, cricket is huge in Southeast Asia. I mean, all of Asia, right? But that'd be one. Have you guys gone to a cricket game?
No, I've never watched a cricket game.
That would be a wild experience.
They did kickboxing.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. We went to where were we? We were in Bangkok, and we went to a Muay Thai kickboxing, and it was unbelievable. It was so fun.
Have you guys ever trained like that?
All right. Well, Caleb, I think it's pretty safe to say that Straz and I are both pretty jealous of the life you're living, gallivanting around Eastern Europe, meeting new people, having new experiences, playing new sports, or meeting people who are polo players. Dude, that is awesome. But I hope that life will bring you back to the States at some point, and we could all hang out together, have a drink. Would love to meet you in person. I'm definitely looking forward to that opportunity.
Definitely looking forward to that. Honestly, like that would be one of the reasons I would come back to the States. You know,
don't come back. Don't come back on account of us. But when you are back, we will get together.
I thought of Caleb last summer, Sean, when we were traveling. Remember?
I do remember you mentioned.
You hit me up, Steve. Yeah, you hit me up. I was looking at tickets to Singapore, and you know, it was going to be tough to get out there, man. Not like it was like a 23-hour flight and like 3 different layovers to get there from Budapest. It was like craziness.
It wouldn't have made sense. We were moving too fast too.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, you guys were all over the place.
7 cities in 24 days.
Are you guys going to do that again this year?
Yeah, we'll come to you. We're going to do Europe.
No way?
No, we'll see. We don't know yet.
Oh, okay. I was like, hey,
if we do it again, Europe will be next for sure.
Cool. All right.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll still be here.
Yeah. All right. Well, Caleb, look, we appreciate you doing this, and more importantly, I'm speaking on behalf of the entire FinTwit community, if you want to call it. You bring great value to the discourse of financial markets, and Steve and I and everybody, we're much better for having a guy like you around. So thanks for doing what you do, and keep doing it. And man, I hope we can meet you actually in Europe, Straz, and not you put that bug in my ear. I want to come to you. That'll be better.
I agree.
Listen. Really appreciate you guys having me on. This is so cool. And I could say the same thing about you guys. You know, I think the thing that's so amazing about this entire space is everyone's extremely selfless. Everyone's just so hungry to add value, absorb value, right? And I think it's just an amazing, beautiful thing. And, you know, 5 years ago, I was watching podcasts like this, wanting to be on them, wanting to be involved, wanting to know guys like yourself. And so I think for anyone who's watching this, I am such an advocate and proponent of starting to build a personal brand, sharing value, creating that value for others. And I think if you take anything from this conversation, I hope it's that. So get started with whatever your niche is. Maybe it's finance, and hopefully I'll see some new people on FinX here pretty soon.
Good for you, and hopefully your story inspires some people to get involved and get started and just dive right in, right? So we're glad you're here, buddy. It's been a pleasure interacting with you, getting to do shows like this and Twitter Spaces. Glad to have you.
Man, much love, guys. Thank you.